Hello everybody, I'm Don West and welcome to the Gunfighters video series. Tonight we're going to talk about deadly force, when you would be justified in using deadly force and when you wouldn't be justified in using deadly force. A little bit about myself. I spent 27 years training law enforcement, SWAT, and military special forces. I spent 10 years as a member of a special operations team in counterterrorism. 4 years as a special deputy for a state police department. And then the last 25 years training civilians in deadly force and firearms instruction. So tonight we're going to talk about deadly force. Deadly force is a big topic. Now this is what you need to understand. This is a foundations course. What that means is I'm going to give you some really juicy information, some good information that you need. But it's a foundations course, which means you're getting the basics. You're just getting started. You need to understand that it doesn't stop here tonight. You're not going to watch this video and then go out and you know everything there is. It's a lifelong journey. I've been teaching this for 27 years and I still learn new things. Sometimes it's because it's explained in a different way and it's like, oh, that makes more sense now, or oh, that makes sense. And sometimes the laws just change and you have to stay current on that. It's your responsibility to stay current. So with that, you need to understand that this is a foundations course. Along with that, also realize that each state can have differences or different things in their laws surrounding deadly force. So you need to understand the state's laws. If you have reciprocity with a state, you're carrying in another state and you're able to use your permit, you have to understand the laws of that state because those are the laws that you have to follow when you're in their state. You know, is that state a castle doctrine state? Is it not a castle doctrine state? Do you have a duty to retreat? Can you stand your ground? All those things you need to know before you get there. So make sure that you understand that. Make sure that you know that you need to get training even after this class. And it's even a good idea to get training from multiple people so you get different perspectives. Now I'm going to give a fair warning. I am not a politically correct person. I'm not worried about whether I insult your sensitivity. You know what? You can turn the video off if you want, or just grow some thicker skin, because what we're talking about today is serious. The things we're talking about today could literally mean whether you're taking another human being's life or not. And if you're faced with that decision, you better know whether you can or can't legally use that type of force. Now, firearms they're political. It's highly political. Anything dealing with firearms is highly political. And I'm going to tell you, gun control has nothing to do with control and everything to do with being controlled. I might be popping a few bubbles here right now, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm just going to listen and see if I hear somebody's bubble pop. But your state senators, your politicians, your local politicians, they don't give a crap whether you have a gun or not. They don't care. They could care less. It's not about whether you have the right or don't have the right. It's not about control. It's not about safety. It's about being controlled. And honestly, they don't think that you should have a gun. So, there. First bubble popped for some of you. Sorry. Again, we're talking about some pretty serious stuff today. Deadly force is a very serious topic. You need to understand the mechanics behind deadly force. How do you use deadly force? How do you know if you can use deadly force? You know, what decisions are you going to be faced with? What decision is there on when I can or when I can't shoot? You know, am I okay? And you better understand before you make that decision the mechanics of that so that you understand and you feel confident and comfortable in carrying a gun. Most people in this country, they think because I'm old enough to buy a gun, I go and get my permit, I know what I'm doing. And nothing could be further from the truth. In my opinion, that's one of the biggest myths in this country, that I'm old enough to buy a gun, I'm old enough to get my permit, so therefore I know what I'm doing. Now I might sound a little harsh, but you know what? the topic that we're talking about is very serious. So understand the mechanics behind deadly force. You have to know this stuff. All right, we're going to get started. One of the first things that I'm going to talk to you about is an acronym. And this acronym is YOYO. And as what that stands for is you're on your own. You might be in a situation and you might call dispatch and they might get the police rolling, but guess what? You're on your own. Because by the time they get there, the situation's probably going to be over. Law enforcement is a reactionary force. They can't do anything until the law has been broken. So they're a reactionary force. It would be nice if the bad guy would call them up and say, hey, I'm going to such and such's house, and it's on this street, this address, and give them directions and say, I'll be there in 20 minutes, meet you there. But they don't do that. The bad guys don't do that. So the law enforcement people have to wait for the call to come in, and then they respond. Now, when seconds count, well, the cops are only minutes away. That's why the acronym of YOYO. All right, because when they get there, chances are the situation is over. The person has left, somebody's been shot, whatever it is. All right, most departments are undermanned, which means that it's going to be a longer response time than you would like it to be. And in a stressful situation, seconds seem like minutes and minutes seem like hours. So just keep that in mind. The bad guys, they don't think like you. You need to know that. The bad guys don't think like you. They think of you as a resource. They think of your stuff as a resource. They think of your money in your wallet as a resource because they're just looking for a way to get their next fix. They're just looking for a way to buy their next drug so that they can get that high. They aren't sitting there thinking, hey, they don't get high and then think, hey, Arby's has their beef sandwich on sale 5 for $5. I should go get some. No, they're thinking, I've got X amount of time. I need to go and figure out how I'm going to get the money in order to get my next fix. They know they have a time frame. They know they have a deadline. And so they're working on how they can meet that deadline in order to get their next fix. So they don't think like you. You are nothing more than a resource. All they want is your stuff. All they want is anything of yours that they can get that will help them get their fix. And they will do whatever they need to take it, including up to taking your life. So you need to understand they don't think like you do. You need to understand that they aren't trying to get along in society like you are. So 90% of the crimes are committed by 10% of the people. It's just the statistics. You got the same people, they do the same thing over and over because their problem never ends. They always have to look for their next fix. So that's what they're doing. So stop trying to think that they're trying to contribute to society and get along like you because they're not. All right? We're going to dispel some Hollywood myths during this video. Things that Hollywood have taught you that it's just not true. And if you do those things, you're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up in trouble because what Hollywood is teaching is not reality. It's not real. So you need to understand that. Now, when it comes to deadly force, there's 2 times that you can use your firearm to defend yourself. 2 times. The first is in self-defense. All right? If you go to the state that you live in, and you look at the code of law that talks about deadly force, there's not a statute in there for deadly force. Deadly force is a term that has been created to help us understand it. What you're going to find is you're going to find a statute for justified homicide. All right? Or justified homicide. The second time that you can use the firearm in self-defense is if you're being attacked or someone else is being attacked, you can then use your firearm to defend someone else. All right? Now that's a personal choice. There's no law in the state that I live in, which is Idaho. There is no law in the state of Idaho that says I have to engage if I'm carrying concealed and I come across somebody who's being raped. I don't have to interject myself into that situation. And the reason why is because that situation is deadly. It may cost me my life, or I may be seriously injured. It's my decision. So the state is saying that they're not going to require that I do that. That's my choice. All right, so it becomes a moral choice based on your moral code. Now, if you find yourself in a situation, you're going to be held to the reasonable person standard. And what that means is you're going to be held to the reasonable person standard, which is if you took 10 people and put them in a room, or in this case 12 people, which would be a jury, and you have them in the same room, would the majority of them have responded the same way? So what does that mean? That means that in this country, we're told that we are innocent until we're proven guilty. Well, guess what? You have one attorney who is trying to prove that you're guilty, and one attorney that is hopefully trying to defend you. Well, they're going to be putting the jury together, and because one wants one outcome and one wants another outcome, who do you think that they're going to be trying to pick to put on that jury? They're looking for people who are like-minded people, either for you or opposing you, depending on what attorney it is. So you better hope that the attorney is trying to find people who are like-minded like you. So for example, what am I talking about? There are people who operate off of moral code and letter of the law. Now, what does that mean? If you're driving down the highway and the speed limit is 80 miles an hour and you're going 83 and you get pulled over, are you going to want somebody who has spirit of the law or moral, the moral law, or do you want somebody who's letter of the law? So if you're the guy that thinks 83, it's 83, come on, it's close enough. Or it's 80, that's how it is. It says right here on paper, blah, blah, blah. All right? The guy who says, no, the speed limit's 80 and that's what you're supposed to be going, but you are going 83, you're getting a ticket, is a letter of the law kind of guy. The guy that says, it's 83, it's only 3 miles over. I mean, my speedometer could be wrong. I mean, it's 3 miles over. And the officer says, you know what, it's only 3 miles over. That is a spirit of law or a moral law, all right? So if whatever type of person you are, and we're all one of those kind of people, whatever type of person you are, we're hoping that we get the like people on the jury, people who think like us, all right? That's how it is. That is the reality. So just keep that in mind. So let's get into the deadly force part of this. There are 3 elements of deadly force. There are 3 things, 3 elements that must be present in order for deadly force to be justified. If one of them is not present, you're not going to be justified in using deadly force. Plain and simple. These 3 elements are key in being justified in using deadly force. You have to have all 3. Can't be 2, can't even be 2.5. It has to be 3. If one goes away, you're no longer justified. So it's going to have to, the situation is going to have to escalate. Okay? So the first is ability. Now ability equals the tool or the weapon. All right? The weapon that the person had at their disposal in order to inflict serious bodily harm or death. If they've got a gun, that's automatic deadly force. I mean, if they've got a gun, they don't have to be close to you in order to inflict serious bodily harm or death. Now let's pause for just a second and talk about serious bodily harm. We know what death is, but what is serious bodily harm? Well, serious bodily harm is an injury that is going to alter your lifestyle. You're going to lose the use of a limb. You're going to lose an eye. Something like that is going to alter your way of life as you are accustomed to it now. That is serious bodily injury. It's important that you understand that definition. So ability is the first element, and it's the tool or the weapon that the person is using. The second is opportunity, and that is the distance and the proximity. Are they close enough, or are they in a close enough proximity to be able to use the weapon or the tool that they have at their disposal to inflict serious bodily harm or death? So for example, if a person has a baseball bat and they're 50 yards away and they're screaming, I'm going to beat your head in with this bat. I am going to ruin your life. I'm going to, they're all these threats. But they're just standing there and they're 50 yards away. Okay, yeah, they have the ability because that bat is there and it can be a weapon, but they don't have the opportunity at 50 yards away to use that bat as a weapon. Okay, right now they're just like a dog on a chain. They're just going to bark and bark, but they can only go to the end of the chain. But now let's change that a little bit. They've got that bat and they're screaming and yelling, but they're closing the gap. They're coming closer to you. Well, now that changes the situation. You understand? They're standing there. That's not, at 50 yards, that's not a threat. But as they're closing that gap and getting closer, they're going to get within the proximity or the distance that they can use that deadly force then to inflict serious bodily harm or death. And then the third one is intent. The third element is intent. They have to have the intent. They manifest the intent to use that tool or that weapon in order to inflict serious bodily harm or death. So they're getting closer with the bat, they come back, and they start to, they're swinging it at you. So intent is action. It equals action. What are the actions that are being taken? And also along with that are the words. What words are they using with that? Do the words match all of those things? So intent is actions and words. All three of those have to be present. Every one of them have to be present. Once they're present, you've got this area right here that comes into play. Once you have ability, opportunity, and intent. All three have to be present in order for you to be justified in using deadly force. If opportunity goes away, you're not justified. If intent goes away, you're not justified. If ability isn't there, you're not justified. All three of them have to be present. I can't stress enough. This is the key to keeping your butt out of jail or keeping your butt out of trouble. Ability, opportunity, and intent. I can't stress this enough. You need to learn it, live it, and love it. All right? All three must be present. Once one goes away, your opportunity to shoot goes away. All right? Or to protect yourself goes away. You will not be justified in using deadly force. So when they start talking about all of these scenarios on TV where people have done something and they've used deadly force, it's easy to identify whether or not they're going to be convicted, really, as long as this is followed. Now again, firearms are very political, and there have been situations where they have tried to manipulate things in order to push an agenda. Now that's always in play. We have no control over that. But as long as we have a clean shoot, as long as we have all of these things, we should be okay, all right? So make sure that these are there. Again, I can't stress this enough. Each one of those have to be there. Ability, opportunity, and intent. They have to manifest their intent, they have to have the ability, and they have to have the opportunity to use the tool that they have at their disposal as a deadly weapon. Doesn't have to be a knife, doesn't have to be a gun. It can be a screwdriver. It can be a flashlight. It could be a ballpoint pen. A deadly weapon could be anything. Anything that would give them the ability and the opportunity to inflict serious bodily harm, and that's their intention, is a weapon at that point in time. So again, ability, opportunity, and intent. I know I'm kicking a dead horse here, but you have to understand this. You don't have to like it, but you do have to understand it. So now there's other things that come into play, and each state is different. Some states have the castle doctrine, which means, you can pretty much defend yourself at will, all right? Some people have a stand your ground rule. Some people have a duty to retreat, or there's not a duty to retreat. It just depends on where you live, and you need to understand what the rules are, what the laws are, where you live, or where you're visiting. So, and all of those those that are not castle doctrine, they fall in preclusion. They're kind of kissing cousins, if you will. Now, preclusion means that you're taking every step possible to avoid the situation completely. You're doing everything you can to avoid it. You know, if you can leave, you're expected to leave. That's what preclusion means. You've got to avoid it, and it's a last resort. Ability, opportunity, and intent. All right. If you are required to live under preclusion in some of your law that you're in the state you're living in, that's not good, and you need to start talking to those people that live on the hill and dress in those fancy clothes and go up and waste your tax dollars and start trying to push legislation to get that changed. All right? They're there to serve you. So let's talk about some myths surrounding deadly force or the use of force. Everybody's heard this story. If you shoot somebody, you will be sued. Yeah, you might be. You very well might be, but then you might not either. So you can't live based on you can't make your decision based on that you might be sued. You need to understand that you can defend yourself as long as ability, opportunity, and intent are present. All right? You may be sued, but if you are sued and you have these three, ability, opportunity, and intent, you'll be okay. Okay? So let's talk about a situation that happened a few years ago. When I say the name Trayvon Martin or George Zimmerman, I'm sure you know the situation. I'm sure you've heard of the situation and all of that. Okay? There was this poor little boy, this underprivileged boy, that was just going to the convenience store to get some Skittles for his little brother. Yeah, right. Okay? And then George Zimmerman, who was, the neighborhood watch guy, and he was trying to keep the neighborhood safe. Anyway, you've heard the story. If you haven't, go out online and read it. So here's the deal. It ended up, George Zimmerman was within his rights because he was functioning in a capacity for the neighborhood. All right? He comes around a corner, pow. Trayvon jumps on top of him, and what's he doing? Bam, bam, bam. He's continually putting George Zimmerman's head into the sidewalk. Let me think. Let's see. If somebody's head is being slammed into the sidewalk multiple times with force, is death or serious bodily harm going to happen? Yeah, probably, unless you're one of those guys, and we won't talk about that. Yeah. Okay, death or serious bodily harm can result from that. So what was the weapon? What was the weapon? What was the ability to inflict serious bodily harm or death? It was the fact that he was on top of him and he's pounding his head into the sidewalk repeatedly. Ability is there. Opportunity. He was certainly within a proximity or a distance and able to use that sidewalk as a deadly weapon. Again, he's on top of him, hitting him, pounding his head into the pavement. And then what was his intent? Remember, we talked about intent can also be words. It's not just action, but words. He said, "Tonight you are going to die." Let's see. He had the ability to inflict serious bodily harm or death. He had the opportunity to inflict serious bodily harm or death. And his intent was to inflict serious bodily harm or death. You tell me, did the jury make the right decision? I think so. In my opinion, yes, they did. Myth number 2, if you shoot somebody, make sure they're dead. All right? We don't shoot to kill, we shoot to stop. All right? And you need to understand that. We are trying to protect ourselves. We are defending ourselves, or we're defending others. Shooting is how we're using deadly force. We're using a handgun. if they die, that's a byproduct of the actions that we took in order to stop their actions. So we aren't shooting to kill, we are shooting to stop their actions. We're shooting to protect ourselves or to protect someone else. So you're not shooting to kill, you're shooting to stop. All right? Now, it's important that you know this little fact as well. In the day and age that we live, with the medical advances and the care that is given, there is an 80% chance of survival rate for people who are shot with a handgun. 80%. That's huge. So we're not shooting to kill, we're shooting to stop. Some don'ts that you need to understand when it comes to deadly force. We don't shoot to wound. We do not shoot to wound. All right? Number one, if you think that you're going to shoot somebody in the leg, you're kidding yourself. All right? If I shoot him in the thigh, what's in the thigh? Let's see, there's a big old artery there, and it's going to be Murphy on your side that he's going to clip that artery and they're going to die if you're shooting to wound. All right? Also, that leg is a moving target if I'm shooting at the thigh. There's a good chance that I'm going to miss, and if I miss, that bullet might go somewhere else and strike an innocent bystander, which is a violation of one of the gun safety rules, but just bringing that up so that you know. The next thing is we don't fire warning shots. Again, you fire warning shots, and you're going to be having contact with law enforcement, and they're going to go ahead and help you understand that that was a bad idea. And again, there are innocent bystanders. You are responsible for that bullet from the time that you buy that bullet or that round until you've shot it and it's laying lifelessly in a berm or a target or the person who is mugging you. You are responsible for that piece of lead from cradle to grave. And you better know where it's going, all right? And then the last thing is you don't bluff. Don't show your gun in an aggressive manner or an intimidating manner. That would be brandishing, and that's against the law, all right? So you're not bluffing with your gun. You're not pulling your gun out thinking that, well, if I show them my gun, they're going to get really scared and run away. Guess what? They're not. They aren't afraid. They're going to kick your door in, break into your house, and they are there for one reason and one reason only, and that is to get your stuff. They don't care about you. They want their next drug fix. And if you are between them and that drug fix, they'll attack you. All right? You need to understand that. Again, they don't think like you do. So don't think that because you show that gun that they're going to be like, oh my goodness, don't shoot me. That's not going to happen. All right? It's not going to happen. If you bluff with the gun, be prepared to have it stuck up your butt or something, because they're going to attack you and it's not going to be a good day. In fact, if they crammed it up your butt, that would probably be the best thing that happened to you that day, because what follows when they stick it up your butt is not going to be pleasant. So don't bluff with the gun. Now, there's 3 ways to stop the bad guy. The first is psychological. You've got to get them to want to quit fighting. And the way you do that is to put rounds on target. Okay? If they have to choose to want to stop. And the way they choose is by getting shot, which is also the second way of how you get them to stop, and that is physically or getting rounds on target. You've got to inflict pain on them physically to the point where they want to stop, or the rounds cause them to stop. And then the third, if they continue to aggress after that, is the head. You have to shut the computer down. Okay, so it's referred to as a failure drill. 2 to the body, 1 to the head. You shoot 2 to the body, and if the aggression is continuing, then you can transition and take a headshot. Now again, headshots are very difficult because the head is a moving target. You could be right on line with that with your sights. You've got sight alignment, sight picture. You're squeezing that trigger, and just as you're firing, the head moves and you miss the shot, whatever it is. Or there's 100 reasons why you could miss the shot. So, but those are the 3 ways that you can stop the bad guy. Now, again, Not all states are a castle doctrine state. Not all states are stand your ground. Not all states have duty to retreat. I just want to re-emphasize that. So you need to understand those things. All right? Now, another myth is if you shoot somebody and they fall out the door, you should drag them back inside your house. How many of you have not heard that? Man, I've heard that my entire life. Let me ask you a question. So, if you're at the local convenience store and you get into a confrontation and you end up being justified in using deadly force and you use deadly force and shoot the guy, are you then going to pick their body up, put it in your trunk, drive them to your house, and take them into your living room? No, you're not. So location has nothing to do with it. Dragging them back in the house is not going to justify or unjustify the use of force. Location is not, it has nothing to do with it. All right? Ability, opportunity, intent. Whether you're at the convenience store, whether you're in your house, whether you're on the porch, doesn't matter where you're at. Location means nothing. You have to have ability, opportunity, and intent for that shooting to be justified. You have to have those three things. Again, those three elements must be present. All three. Can't be two, must be all three. So now what do we do if we're stopped by an officer? Well, the first thing is remain calm. Say you're being, you're carrying concealed and you get pulled over. Remain calm, all right? They're just doing their job. So you remain calm and just follow their instructions. And let them know, let the officer know that you have a carry conceal permit and that you're carrying concealed. And they're probably going to say, do you have a firearm on you and where is it? Yes, officer, it's on my right waistline. And don't reach down to your waistline to grab it because guess what? They're going to get all kinds of excited and you might get shot. So you're just going to keep your hands where they can see them, because when I train cops, I teach them to watch the hands. Because in order for you to inflict serious bodily injury, or in order for you to do something against someone, law enforcement or individual, your hands typically have to be involved. So the hands are what we're watching. All right? So keep your hands where they can see them and remain calm. Let them know where it is and then follow their instructions. Now, there might be some officers out there who may say, I would like to retain your firearm during the duration of this stop, sir. And if they say that, okay, that's fine. It's within their rights if they feel safer doing that. But again, don't just reach down and say, okay, here's my gun, because you might get shot. Keep your hands where you can see them and just say, how would you like me to present my firearm to you? And that's where it gets tricky, and that's where it becomes a dance. But make sure that you're communicating with the officer and that they can see your hands at all times for your safety and your protection. So if they want you to surrender the firearm, then they have the right to do that during the stop for their own personal safety. All right? I don't know any officers personally that would even request that, but I've heard there are some out there, so that's just some general information. So now let's get back to the scenario where you've used deadly force, and law enforcement is now responding, because remember, they're a reactionary force. The law has been broken, use of force has been used, and now you've got a person on the ground with bullet holes in them, all right? Dead or not, doesn't matter. Law enforcement is going to show up, and guess what? They are going to want to find out what happened. So you need to understand that when they get there, they are not your friend. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that they're bad guys and that you can't, that you can't trust them or you can't talk to them or whatever it is. You just need to understand that they're not your friend. They are not there to put their arm around you and console you and say, oh, gosh, Joe, I'm so sorry you had to go through this. That's not what they're there for. They're there to figure out if the law has been broken and decide who's going to jail. All right? So they're not there to be your friend. And I would highly advise you to give basic information, because there's this thing called Miranda rights. I'm sure you heard of it. You have the right to remain silent, and I would exercise that right. And if they're pressuring you to give them a story, say, listen, officer, I respect your position, I respect your authority, but I don't feel comfortable talking about this without my legal counsel present. Plain and simple. Because they will use what you say against you. All right? So they're not your friend. General information. I was here. This person aggressed me to the point where I was in fear of my life and I had to use deadly force. I mean, the less you can say, the better. All right? Again, I'm not saying they're not your friend because they're bad people and that you shouldn't like them and you shouldn't cooperate. You want to be cooperative, but you are not required by law to make an official statement at that point in time. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to legal counsel. Exercise that right. That would be my advice to you. Let's talk about avoidance. Ultimately, that's probably the best defense. If we can avoid the situation altogether, really, that's better. I mean, going back to the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman situation, what is Zimmerman's life now? It's crap. I mean, he will never have his life back. And he could have avoided that situation. Now, that doesn't change whether he was justified in using deadly force or not, but he could have avoided that whole situation. Now, I'm not judging. I'm not saying anything, what was right or what was wrong. I'm just making a point that his actions, look at the consequences of those actions. If you can avoid it altogether, that's really the best defense. It's but it's a moral thing. It's up to you. In my opinion, you'd have been better off to avoid it. Yeah, somebody's house definitely would have been broke in that night, but we have insurance so that we can replace the TV or whatever. But that's a whole different topic. So avoidance. How do we avoid these things? How could we stop from being a victim? Number one, refuse to be a victim. But how could we stop ourselves from even being in a situation? Well, it's all about situational awareness. It's all about paying attention, being aware of what's going on around us. So there's a color code of awareness, code of awareness for avoidance. And I want to introduce you to that. You may have heard this already. If you have, it's a great review. So the color code of awareness is this. It's different colors representing different stages of awareness that we should be in, all right, or that we could possibly be in. The first level, or the first color, is white. Now, white is we are completely unaware of our surroundings. We have no idea what's going on around us. We are just walking through life oblivious to everything. All right? If you're in that stage, if you're in color white, you're going to die. All right? The next color is yellow. Yellow is we are relaxed, but we're aware. I like to call it a healthy paranoia, if you will. I know there are bad people in the world. I know that they are, willing to do things. So I'm relaxed, but I'm aware. I'm paying attention to what's going on around me. I'm aware of certain, of the things going on. This car, that person, all of that stuff. I'm aware. I'm paying attention to my surroundings. The next is orange. You're aware to specific things. Something has alerted you and you're paying attention to that. You are alert and you are aware. A great example of that is you're sleeping at night. You're at home and you're in bed and you're sleeping and you hear a noise. Boom, you stand straight up and you're just focused. You're intent on what was that noise. Okay? You are dialed in to that specific thing to determine whether it's a threat or not. All right? So yellow is you are aware of a specific threat. And then red, the fight is on. Bullets are flying. You're moving and shooting. You're looking for cover and concealment while you're moving and shooting. And you're defending. You're in a defensive posture. You're protecting yourself and other people around you. Now, I'm not going to go there. That's a whole different video. So you need to be aware of those colors of awareness, all right? You can't live in red because if you do, you're going to kill everybody, all right? Everything that happens around you that seems aggressive, you're just going to freak out over. You can't live in white because you're going to die. You're just oblivious. You don't know what's going on. So the key is to live, somewhere around that yellow or orange. Okay, more yellow than orange. You're paying attention. If you're in white and something happens, you will never be able to make the jump to red. It will be impossible because you're not aware, and you can't get your mindset where it needs to be in condition white in order to deal with condition red. It's impossible. So if you're in white and something happens, just plan on dying. All right, you are going to be the casualty. So if you're red, again, the fight is on. You don't want to live in red. You want to live in yellow, maybe a hint of orange. Now, when it's time to de-escalate, say you're in the situation and it's time to de-escalate. You've dealt with the issue, the threat is removed, and now you have to de-escalate because you can't stay keyed up. You've got to de-escalate, and it's just the reverse order. You go to red, it's sequencing down to yellow. Okay, you want to de-escalate back down so that you're aware, but you're not at red anymore. So that's the color code of awareness. You need to learn to live within that color code. Now, there's 7 principles to self-defense as well. 7 principles of defense. The first is alertness. You have to be alert. You have to know. Because if you're not alert, gun doesn't make a difference. Example of that is 9/11. We were caught on we were resting on our laurels, and we got hit, and we got caught. We were unaware, weren't alert. We weren't paying attention, and we got hit. The second is you have to be decisive. You have to decide. You have to make a decision. You have to do something. And refusing to be a victim is really a good decision. Don't be a victim. Don't allow yourself to be a victim. Take the time to get the training or whatever it is you need to be so that you're not a victim. That's being decisive. And I guess not deciding to be a victim is a decision too. Myself personally, I refuse to be a victim. I am not going to be a victim, period. All right? The third is speed. You have to take action, and you have to do it quick. All right? Your actions, you have to take action on your decision, and you got to do it quick. It's now. When you're in that situation, you can't hold back. You make the decision and you go. All right? And along with that, the next thing is aggressive. You have to be aggressive in the actions that you're taking with that decision, because that aggression is what's going to give you the edge. It's what's going to help you to take the initiative over the bad guy, is that aggression. All right? So you got to have aggression with that. The next thing is you got to be calm. You got to be cool, man. You got to be chill, and you got to be precise. So you're calm. You're not letting emotion take over. You're not letting fear take over, because fear is an emotion. You're not letting that take over. If you let the emotion of the situation take over, you're going to find yourself in trouble. So you've got to be cool, you got to be calm, and you got to be precise. You have to know. This means, is what this rule number 5 means, or this principle number 5 is what that means, is you have to make some decisions now before you're in the situation. And then you have to train yourself to that decision. You have to train yourself to that process. I train people all the time, and they want to know, how do you deal with stress? How do you get to the point where you're dealing with stress? That is a whole nother class. And I'd be more than happy to do a video on that. In fact, I will do another video on that, on how you deal with that, how you keep that coolness, how you remain calm, and how you're precise in your choices and your decisions. A little quick story. I was in Florida, my wife and I, celebrating our anniversary. I'm in Florida, okay? We're getting ready to fly home. We got time, so we decided to eat at a restaurant outside the airport. I ended up in a situation in the restaurant. I don't have a gun. Fortunately, the bad guy didn't have a gun, but guess what? I already knew, I'm in that situation, and I already had my decisions made. I already knew what I was going to do, And when the crap was hitting the fan, I stayed cool, I stayed calm, and I was very precise in my action and my response. And as a result of it, I wasn't a victim. All right? Afterwards, my wife was just like, how did you do that? How come, how come, how come? And so I walked her through it. I talked her through the process. All right? That's what you have to do. You have to take the time to prepare yourself so that when you're in the situation, you can respond, not react. And there's a difference between responding and reacting. If I'm reacting, I'm just trying to get crap against the wall and hope something sticks. But if I'm responding, it's based off of decisions and choices and things that I've trained myself to be able to do. So you have to be cool, calm, and precise. Number 6, you got to be ruthless. Man, you got to stop caring about that person. And when I say that, I don't mean you're just this big old piece of crap and that you're just looking for a fight and that anybody gets in your way and you're going to just crush them. I will crush your skull, okay? That's not what I'm talking about. So what I'm talking about is you've made the decision and now you understand that that person that's aggressing you is your enemy. He is the bad guy, and you are willing to do whatever it is you need to do in order to not be the victim. All right? Which means you might have to break a bone. You might have to bust him in the face. You might have to do this. You might have to do that. You know what? You got to be willing to do it. You got to be ruthless. They are not a person. They are a threat. All right? You got to understand it. That might be a weird concept for you. Some of you are out there probably cheering. Some of you are out there probably thinking, wow, this guy is crazy. But you know what? In that situation in Florida, that was not a human being. That was a person who was trying to manipulate me and people around me and trying to inflict harm. That's a piece of crap. That's what that is. Again, they're not trying to get along in society. They're not trying to contribute like you and I. And you got to keep that straight. When you're making these decisions, you got to evaluate it for what it is. You've got to evaluate it for who they are. If they're doing that, if they're not trying to get along in society, don't treat them like they are, because they're not. You need to be willing, if you got to bust their head, then do it. That's where you got to be. You got to be ruthless. It's not that you're inhumane. It's not that you're looking to inflict harm on people. It's that you're not going to be a victim. Okay, I beat that in long enough. I've kicked that horse. All right, and number 7 is surprise. The 7th principle is surprise. You've got to do things that's going to surprise them. You've got to get the bad guy off guard. So it's surprise is the 7th principle. All right. Surprise is what's going to give you the edge. All right. So you've got to get them on the defense. That's the only way you're going to win the fight, is if you get them on the defense. You can't win if you're on the or you got to get them on the defense and you got to be the offense. If you're on the defense, you're not going to win. All right, so let's wrap this up. Let's talk about, just summarize what we've talked about today. All right, in conclusion, the first thing is, what are your triggers? What is it that's going to trigger you to be able to use deadly force? What do you have to know about yourself that's going to allow you to use deadly force? You got to figure that out now. Again, if you wait until you're in the fight, you're just going to be a victim. That's just how it is. There's a rule that we live by on team, and that is you will rise to your highest level of training. So if your training is nothing, that's probably what you're going to rise to. All right? You will rise to your highest level of training. Now, there's a piece here. I'm just going out of turn. There's a piece here. If you're interested, send me your email and I will tell you the phrase that you need to know and understand when it comes to deadly force. I just thought of that. You're going to have to email me in order to get that. My email account is west626@gmail.com, and I will tell you the phrase that you need to know in order to help you stay out of trouble. And this is key, but I'm not going to tell it to you unless you email me. All right, back to the conclusion. All right. What's going to trigger you mentally to be able to use deadly force? The other thing that you need to understand that we've talked about is you don't have to go out looking for a fight. You don't have to go out looking for the violence. It's going to find you. The way society's going, It's going to find you. You're not going to have a problem. And if you're not in your situational awareness, if you're not paying attention, it'll find you and it'll kick your butt. All right? The other thing we've talked about is the bad guys are going to come to you because you're their prey. They look at you as a resource. You are just something that can allow them to get to the next fix that they need, and their problems don't go away. They aren't looking for the dollar mill at Arby's. All right? They are just looking for their next resources so that they can get their high. We've talked about gunfights. In order to survive a gunfight, you got to be ruthless. You got to be willing to be in that gunfight. All right? You got to be willing to get down in the blood and guts. We've debunked some of the Hollywood myths, dragging them into the house, all of that stuff. Go back and review the video. All right? Don't believe what Hollywood's telling you because they're going to get you thrown in jail. They're just flat teaching people some bad stuff. And I've had people that I've talked to, that I've trained, that have that belief that what Hollywood is telling them is what they can do, and they're going to go to jail and they're going to have a new buddy. They're going to have a new friend with benefits. All right? And it ain't going to be who they want. It's going to be, we won't go there. All right? You need to refuse to be a victim. We talked about that. You need to understand, we're going to wrap it up here, that if you are in a gunfight as a civilian, the average gunfight for a civilian, for you and I, will last about 3 seconds. So you have about 3 seconds to make your decision to be involved with the gunfight. Again, you need to know before you're there. All right, that's all we got for you. This video, again, is for your benefit. It's to help you stay out of trouble. So watch it more than once. Watch it over and over. Get this stuff into your head. Ability, opportunity, intent. Those 3 elements have to be there. If they're not there, if one leaves, you are not going to be justified. These 3 things are the key to keeping yourself out of trouble. All right. Till next time, you have a good time. You be good. Shoot straight. Shoot safe. And Gunfighter says, see you later.